The morning dew still clung to the rose petals when I heard that telltale crunch of designer heels on gravel. Didn't even have to turn around, I knew who it was. Only one woman would ruin a garden in Louboutins like it was her personal runway. Still playing gardener, I see. Her voice was syrupy sweet. Poison in a silk wrapper. I stayed crouched by the bushes, trimming the white roses my dad had planted for my wedding. The same wedding that ended in disaster when my ex-husband ran off with the same woman now standing behind me. "Good morning, Vanessa," I muttered without looking up. "To what do I owe this high-heeled ambush?" She stepped closer. Her perfume hit before her shadow did something sharp and expensive. "The will is being read tomorrow," she said. "Liam and I figured it'd be better if we had a civilized chat before things get dramatic." I stood up slowly, wiping dirt on my apron. "There's nothing to talk about. This is my father's home. His legacy. His estate, Clara," she corrected, flashing that fox smile. "And considering Liam was like a son to your father for nearly 2 decades, we believe we deserve a fair share." The garden shears in my hand suddenly felt heavier. "You mean the same Liam who cheated on me with his secretary Ancient History?" she replied, waving a manicured hand like betrayal had an expiration date. "My dad never forgave him for that. He may have played golf on Fridays, but he wasn't blind." Vanessa's grin flickered. "We'll see. Your brother Theo doesn't seem to agree." Her words hit like ice water down my spine. Theo and I hadn't spoken since the funeral. He'd spent more time comforting Liam than talking to me. "You've been talking to Theo?" "More than talking," she purred. "He's been extremely helpful." I tightened my grip on the shears. "Dad once told me roses need a strong hand, Clara. But never a cruel one. Even the thorns belong." "Leave," I said, voice low and steady. "Before I forget how to be civil." She laughed a sharp bark that didn't touch her eyes. "This place is worth millions. You honestly think you can keep it all to yourself? Playing house in Daddy's garden while the rest of us get nothing." "My father built this house with his bare hands," I said, voice rising. "Every room, every brick. He didn't build it for vultures." Vanessa snorted. "Legacy. Come on, it's always about money. And tomorrow when that will is read, you'll understand that." She turned toward the gate, then paused with one final shot. "Oh, and you should probably start packing. Liam and I will need at least a month to renovate." I stared after her as her heels clicked away. The white roses at my feet were dusted with soil from my trembling hands. My phone felt cold in my pocket. I dialed instinctively. "Cassie." My voice shook. She was here. "Vanessa." "She said Theo's helping them and there's something off about all this." Cassie didn't hesitate. "I'll be there in 30. Don't panic, Clara. Your dad wasn't stupid." After the call, something caught my eye just beneath the rosebush. A corner of white sticking out from the earth. I pulled it out carefully. A letter. My name was scrawled across it in Dad's familiar scratchy handwriting. The paper was damp with dew. My fingers trembled. "Dad," I whispered, turning it over. "What are you trying to tell me?" Cassie arrived with her signature-style oversized sunglasses, an armful of legal folders, and a bottle of red. "Figured we'd need this," she said, holding up the wine before eyeing the sealed envelope in my hand. "You haven't opened it?" "I wanted to wait," I admitted. After what Vanessa said about Theo, I didn't want to do this alone. Cassie poured us each a glass before settling beside me in Dad's study. The room still smelled like him tobacco, old leather, and dust. I wasn't ready to give any of it up. "All right," she said softly. "Let's open it." The envelope tore easily. Inside a single sheet of paper and a small brass key. I read aloud. "Dear Clara, if you're holding this, then the scavengers have started circling. My guess is Vanessa. She's always been more ambition than heart. The key unlocks the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside, you'll find what you need to protect what matters. Remember what I taught you about chess? Sometimes you let go of a pawn to save the queen. Love always, Dad." Cassie was already halfway to the desk. "You knew about this?" I asked, stunned. "I helped him plan it," she confessed. "He came to me 6 months ago, right after his diagnosis. He didn't trust the people around him, but he trusted you." The drawer creaked open. Inside a thick folder and a flash drive. "Before you look," Cassie said, "there's something you should know. Your dad changed his will 2 days before he passed. Legally, it's called a codicil, and it changes everything." I opened the folder. Photos, screenshots, emails. My stomach twisted. There was Vanessa handing an envelope to a nurse outside the hospice, Liam entering a rival law firm, bank records showing strange withdrawals. "Oh my God," I whispered. He had them followed, Cassie confirmed. The flash drive video of Vanessa offering a bribe. 3 days before your dad died. And Theo, I asked, my voice barely audible. Cassie flipped to the next photo. That's him leaving a meeting with her. But look closer. In the image, Theo looked angry. In his hand, a check. "He gave it to your dad," she said. "Said he wanted to fix what he'd helped break. That's when your dad acted fast." I sank into the chair dizzy from the weight of it all. "They think they're about to win tomorrow," I said. "They're celebrating." Cassie's smile was sharp. "Let them. The first version of the will gives them just enough rope. But the codicil, it's a trap. And when it springs, they're done." She nodded. "And you, Clara, you inherit everything. But not before they show the world who they really are." I looked down at the letter again. Even now he was protecting me, teaching me, showing me how to fight without becoming bitter. There was a knock at the door. Cassie raised an eyebrow. "That'll be Theo?" I stood slowly. "Let's find out what else he's hiding." Theo stood at the door looking like he hadn't slept in a week. The man who used to win high school debates with nothing but charm and a crooked smile now looked hollow. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, and he clutched a worn leather folder like it was the only thing holding him together. "You look like crap," I said, stepping aside. He smirked faintly. "Yeah, well, being a double agent isn't as glamorous as the movies make it seem." I didn't laugh. The study still smelled like dad leather-bound books, old pipe tobacco, and something earthy like cedar and memory. The folder Cassie and I had gone through was still open on the desk, the photos and bank records laid out like evidence on a courtroom table. Theo hesitated when he saw it all. "So you know," he said quietly. "I know enough," I replied, my voice tight. "Now talk." He lowered himself into the chair across from me like his bones were heavier than usual. His eyes flicked over the photos, the USB, the pages of numbers and timestamps. Then he opened his own folder, pulling out a single check. "She gave me this," he said. $500,000, just to lie. To say Dad wasn't of sound mind when he signed the final version of his will. My stomach turned at the amount, at the implication. "But you didn't take it." He shook his head. "No, I gave it straight to Dad." He held out the check like it might prove he hadn't completely betrayed me. "I didn't take it." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Why let me believe you were siding with them?" "Because Vanessa needed to think she had me," he said, rubbing his hands together like they were cold. "She's the kind of person who thrives on leverage. If she believed I was loyal, she'd drop her guard." I studied my brother. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see the confident man who once stood shoulder to shoulder with Liam at my wedding. I saw the little boy who used to sneak into my room during thunderstorms. "What changed your mind?" I asked. He looked up. "You. Watching you stand there at the funeral while she pretended to be the grieving daughter-in-law. I couldn't let her win." Theo leaned back, pulled out his phone, and swiped to a file. "I recorded everything he said. Every meeting, every call, every time she and Liam laid out their plan." He pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the room. "Once he's gone, we challenge the will. Theo says the lawyers will fold. Clara won't fight. She never does." My jaw tightened. "And after that," Liam asked, "we liquidate everything. Sell the house, cash out the company shares, flip the property. It's perfect." Theo paused the recording. "They planned this before Dad even got worse. Cassie had told me earlier they'd started circling before the diagnosis." Hearing it in Vanessa's voice made it real in a way the evidence hadn't. I looked at my brother. "Why now? Why tonight?" He pulled out a sealed envelope. "Because there's something else. Something Dad asked me to give you. But only after you knew the whole truth." Inside was a handwritten letter, a short one. "Clara, if you're reading this, then your brother has done what I prayed he would. This next part is important. You know that old ledger in the safe. There's a second one. Not about the garden. About the company. Vanessa wasn't just aiming to steal your home. She was aiming to gut everything I built. What you're about to learn will make you angry. Don't let it harden you. You're better than that. Love, Dad." I looked up, the second ledger. Theo reached into his bag and pulled out a black leather notebook. It looked old, fragile. Dad kept this hidden in the attic, he said, behind the false panel in the closet. It outlines every suspicious transaction Vanessa made through Jeremy and Kosicki's month's worth of siphoned funds. She used Dad's trust as cover. He laid it open in front of me. There were name, dates, transfers to shell companies. It wasn't just greed, it was fraud. She was laundering money, I whispered. Through his business? Yeah, Theo said. And Liam was helping her. He used his legal contacts to create fake vendors. On paper, everything looked legitimate, but it wasn't. It was bleeding the company dry. And Dad knew. Found out about 2 months before the cancer hit him hard. That's when he came to Cassie. That's when this plan started. It hit me then. My father knew he wouldn't be around long enough to stop them himself. So he crafted a trap, something elegant, legal, and undeniable. He didn't just leave a legacy. He left a landmine. They think they're about to win, I murmured. Tomorrow they walk in thinking it's theirs. Theo smiled grim but satisfied. They don't know what's coming. I turned toward the study window. Outside, the roses swayed gently in the night breeze. For the first time in weeks, I felt the rage and grief inside me settle into something else. Focus. Tomorrow wouldn't just be about reading a will. It would be a reckoning. A soft knock on the doorframe pulled us both out of the moment. Cassie stood there with a folder in one hand and a wine glass in the other. Well, she said, glancing at the open ledger. Looks like we're locked and loaded. I crossed the room and stood by the desk, touching the corner of Dad's note. You think he knew it would come to this? Cassie nodded. He didn't hope for it, but he prepared for it. And tomorrow, I asked. She raised her glass. Tomorrow we spring the trap. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked the house barefoot, passing framed photos of birthdays and graduations and Christmas mornings. The version of our family that existed in those pictures didn't match the one I was about to face in court. In the garden, the white roses looked ghostly under the moonlight. I knelt and ran my hand along the earth, half expecting Dad to whisper something from beyond. Instead, I whispered to him, I'm ready now. And I was, not just to fight, but to win with the truth, not with venom, because that's what he raised me to do. The morning sun poured through the kitchen window like nothing was wrong. It was quiet. Too quiet. I sipped my coffee slowly, watching the garden sway in the breeze. The same roses I'd crouched beside when Vanessa arrived days ago were still blooming. Innocent, oblivious. But inside the house, a storm was brewing. Cassie had already set up the study. Files, sorted documents, sealed, everything locked and loaded for what was coming. The camera crew Vanessa insisted on bringing had arrived half an hour early, buzzing around like flies in a courtroom drama. She wanted this day filmed, a historic transition she'd called it in her email. She had no idea it'd end up more like a televised confession. I adjusted my black blazer and took a breath before heading into the study. Cassie looked up from behind the desk and gave me a small nod. Calm, focused, ready. You good? She asked. I've never been more sure of anything I said. Theo arrived next. No suit this time, just a crisp button-down and clear eyes. No more guilt in his step. No hesitation in his voice. She's outside, he said, practicing her I graciously accept the estate smile. It's giving real estate villain. I cracked a smile. Let's hope she hits her mark. This is her big moment. Cassie stepped forward and handed me an envelope. This is the codicil. I'll read it after the first section of the will, just like your father outlined. Once they accept the terms, the amendment triggers automatically. I held the envelope in both hands like it was something sacred. This is going to change everything, Cassie nodded. And it's all legal. Ironclad. We're not just exposing them, we're making it stick. Voices echoed from the hallway. The click of expensive heels, the low murmur of rehearsed charm. Vanessa had arrived. She swept in like she owned the air in the room. She wore a sleek black dress that probably cost more than most people's rent and flashed a wide, fake smile for the cameras. Clara, she said, like she was greeting a coworker she hadn't backstabbed. We're just thrilled to finally get some closure today. Liam followed her quieter, less confident. His eyes didn't meet mine. He looked everywhere except the desk. Let's begin, Cassie said, slipping into her lawyer voice, measured, formal, impossible to rattle. As the appointed executor of John Whitmore's will, I'll begin by reading his last formal testament dated 6 months prior to his passing. Vanessa leaned forward like she was waiting for dessert. Cassie cleared her throat. To my children, Clara Whitmore and Theo Whitmore, and to my longtime associate Liam Barrett, I bequeath the following. I already knew what came next. We all did. Dad's initial will, the decoy, split the estate 70% to me and 30% to Liam and Vanessa jointly. That was the bait. Vanessa squeezed Liam's hand when she heard the numbers. She looked like someone who'd just won the lottery and was already calculating her new square footage. But Cassie didn't stop there. There is, however, a final amendment legally binding added 48 hours before John Whitmore's death. That wiped the smile right off Vanessa's face. Cassie unsealed the envelope and continued. Any party who accepts the inheritance as stated will be agreeing to a full investigation into suspicious financial activity occurring within Jeremy and Company over the past 12 months, including but not limited to fraud, embezzlement, and coercion. Liam's posture shifted. Vanessa froze. Cassie slid a thick folder across the desk. These are preliminary findings. Accompanying the documents is a flash drive containing video and audio evidence, conversations, transactions, and witness statements. Mr. Whitmore collected these himself and instructed that they be released only upon acceptance of the estate. The room went silent. Even the camera crew stopped moving. Vanessa's voice broke through first, tight, shaky. What kind of twisted joke is this? Cassie stayed calm. It's not a joke. It's a legal safeguard. If you choose to decline the inheritance, you walk away clean. But if you take it, everything here becomes part of a criminal investigation. Theo stepped forward, and there's more. He laid down a second folder, one I hadn't even seen until this moment. This is the internal ledger my father kept. It details every suspicious transaction Vanessa made using company accounts, every shell company, every forged invoice. He looked directly at Vanessa. You've been bleeding the business for months, and Liam? You signed off on most of it. Liam finally looked at me. I didn't know it was that deep, he muttered. She told me it was temporary, that your dad approved. Oh, save it, I snapped. You helped her rob him while he was dying. Vanessa stood so fast her chair clattered to the floor. This is slander, she hissed. You can't prove anything. Cassie calmly pulled a USB from her folder and plugged it into the laptop. Dad's voice came through the speakers. If you're watching this, then someone tried to steal what I built. Vanessa Liam. I warned you, and you ignored me. But I'm not the fool you took me for. The video showed him in his study, pale but strong, confident. Clara, if you're the one hearing this now, then you did what I always hoped you would. You stood up. You protected what matters. Vanessa backed away like she'd been slapped. This wasn't supposed to happen, she muttered. He was supposed to be too weak. He was dying. And that's exactly why you moved in, I said, standing. Because you thought he was too sick to fight back. But he didn't need to. He trusted me to finish it. Cassie closed the folder. Vanessa Henry Liam Barrett, if you proceed, this evidence goes straight to the district attorney. Your call. Liam slumped in his chair. I'm out, he mumbled. I didn't sign up for jail. Vanessa turned to him, shocked. You coward. He didn't respond. Then she turned to me. You think you've won? She sneered. You think this makes you better than me? I met her eyes, calm, steady. No, but it makes me free. She lunged forward like she might say more, but the door opened before she could speak. 2 officers entered. Vanessa Henry Liam Barrett, one of them asked. We have a warrant to question you both about financial fraud related to Jeremy and Co. The silence in the room was deafening as they led them out. The camera crew didn't stop rolling, not once. Outside, the garden was still blooming. Inside, the war was over. Back in the study, I sat down in Dad's old leather chair. It smelled like him. Warm, steady. Cassie poured me a glass of water. Theo sat beside me, quiet. You okay? He asked. I think so, I said. I think it's finally over. Cassie gave me a soft smile. There's still the media to deal with. And the company transition. But legally, they don't get a dime. I nodded slowly. Good, that's what Dad wanted. Theo leaned forward. There's something else. I found it last night. Another note, hidden in the greenhouse. He handed it to me. Just one line scribbled in that scratchy handwriting I knew so well. Justice is just the beginning. Now make something beautiful. My throat tightened. I looked out at the garden again, and for the first time since this all began, I could finally breathe. By the time the police cruiser turned the corner with Vanessa in the back seat, the front lawn looked like a press conference. News vans lined the curb. Reporters shouted questions we had no intention of answering. Cameras panned over the house like it was the scene of a high-profile scandal. And in a way it was. Cassie shut the front door behind us and pulled the blinds. Well, she said, setting her bag down, if she wanted to be famous, she got her wish. I stood by the window watching the chaos unfold. Every camera lens was pointed at the house, the same one Dad built brick by brick. Now it was front-page news. They're calling it the Garden Gate fraud, Theo said, scrolling through Twitter on his phone. Hashtag's already trending. I snorted. Because of the roses. Cassie raised a brow. Because of the elegance of it all. The inheritance, the trap, the perfect takedown. It's the kind of drama that sells. I didn't want any of that, but I couldn't stop it either. Let them film, I said finally. They'll move on soon enough. Maybe, Cassie said, but not until we finish this right. She opened her laptop. The DA's office wants to meet tomorrow. The fraud case is already expanding. Turns out Vanessa's pulled stunts like this before. That stopped me. Wait, what? Cassie nodded. 2 other families? One in Michigan, one in Texas. Similar patterns. She got close to an aging patriarch, positioned herself in their business, then slowly siphoned money out before trying to take over completely. Theo stepped forward, jaw tight. She's a serial grifter. Worse, Cassie added. One of the investigators found something in her apartment last night. A file labeled Phase 4 Clara. My stomach sank. What was in it? Cassie handed me a flash drive. You should see it yourself. I plugged it into Dad's old laptop. A document opened clean clinical. Nothing emotional, just steps. Like a blueprint. Phase 4, eliminate obstacles. Finalize estate control. Remove Clara from premises permanently. Establish legal foundation to frame Theo if necessary. Liquidate assets within 90 days. Dissolve garden trust. Remodel entire property. Erase original footprint. Remove Clara permanently, Theo said, staring at the screen. Is that what it sounds like? Not enough to charge her with attempted murder, Cassie said carefully, but enough to raise serious concerns. I blinked hard, trying to focus. The air in the room felt colder now. She wasn't just after the money, I whispered. She wanted to erase everything Dad built, and anyone who stood in her way. Cassie nodded. She knew the garden meant something, that it was symbolic, so she made it her target. Theo clenched his fists. She would have gone through with it too, if Dad hadn't caught her first. My mind reeled. For 2 years, I'd blamed myself for everything: my failed marriage, the distance in the family, even Dad's sudden decline. But now it was crystal clear. This wasn't just betrayal. It was predatory, and she nearly won. Later that afternoon, we sat in the sunroom with the sliding glass door cracked open, the scent of the roses drifting in like a quiet reminder of why we fought so hard. I need to know everything, I said to Cassie. Every document, every timeline, all of it. She handed me a thick binder. Your dad kept meticulous records. This isn't just a case file, it's a roadmap. Names, bank accounts, paper trails. I opened it to the first page and immediately recognized the name of one of Dad's former accountants. Then a legal assistant. Then a private investigator. He built a team, I said, astonished, while he was sick. Cassie smiled. He didn't spend his final months waiting to die. He spent them securing your future. Theo shook his head in disbelief. The man planned his own sting operation from a hospice bed. He always played the long game, I said quietly. He just never told anyone what pieces he was moving. Cassie leaned forward. There's one more thing. Something Vanessa never found. Your dad's personal safe had a second compartment. She slid an envelope across the table. This was inside. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a deed to the empty lot next to my old flower shop, the one I'd lost in the divorce. Cassie grinned. He bought it back last year, quietly, in cash. Then he registered Jeremy Gardens as a new business entity in your name. I stared at the paper. He wanted me to start over. He wanted you to grow, she said, in every sense. Theo stood unable to sit still. We should announce it. Make a statement. Get ahead of the press before they start spinning their own stories. I nodded. But not about revenge, not about the scandal. Cassie's eyes met mine, about legacy. I knew exactly what she meant. That night, I drafted the public statement. In light of recent events, we want to thank the authorities, legal counsel, and members of the community who supported our family through this difficult time. John Whitmore built more than a home or a business. He built a life rooted in integrity, trust, and the quiet power of hard work. Though some tried to take advantage of his kindness, they underestimated the strength of what he planted both in his garden and in us. We are committed to continuing his legacy with the relaunch of Jeremy Gardens, a community-focused greenhouse event space and memorial dedicated to preserving what matters most. I read it to Cassie and Theo in the garden the next morning. Perfect, Cassie said. I'd invest in that, Theo added, half smiling. The press picked it up instantly. For the first time, the coverage shifted. Less about the scandal, more about the woman who stood her ground. People started sending letters, flowers, even volunteers. Something beautiful was growing again. A week later, I walked into the greenhouse. It still smelled like Dad, warm earth and cedar shelves. His favorite orchids were blooming again, somehow thriving despite the chaos. In the center of the room, on his old workbench, sat a note I hadn't noticed before. I picked it up. Clara, if you're reading this, then you've done it. You finished what I started. Not with anger, but with courage. Now it's your turn to build. I believe in you. And in what comes next, love always, Dad. Tears blurred the words for a moment, but I didn't wipe them away. I let them fall. Grief, yes, but also gratitude. Because even after death, my father kept giving me the tools to rebuild. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not just the air conditioning, but the silence, the tension. It had been 3 weeks since the will reading. 3 weeks since Vanessa was arrested in her designer heels, shouting about wrongful accusations as the cameras swarmed. Since then, the evidence Dad left behind had gone through official channels backed by statements, witnesses, and Theo's recordings. Now it was time for the law to catch up. I sat beside Cassie at the prosecution's table. She wore her courtroom armor, navy suit, no-nonsense bun, a stack of legal pads lined with bullet-pointed takedowns. To her right, Theo sat stiff and focused, his hands folded over his lap. Vanessa entered last. No heels this time. Just prison orange flats and a jumpsuit that couldn't hide the rage in her eyes. She scanned the courtroom like she was still trying to calculate her odds. When her gaze landed on me, she didn't flinch, didn't blink. She smiled, cold, defiant. Let her. The judge entered. We all rose. And then the trial began. The prosecution opened with a timeline. It was clean, methodical, and devastating. Ms. Henry systematically infiltrated the Jeremy family's personal and financial structure, the lead prosecutor explained. Beginning as a secretary, later as a romantic partner, and finally as a supposed caretaker to a dying patriarch, all while embezzling funds, forging documents, and preparing to transfer assets through coercion and deceit. They played the audio files Theo had recorded their plan to liquidate the estate, the conversations with shady legal contacts. Then came the video Dad had recorded in his study, the one we'd already played during the will reading. But this time it played on 3 courtroom monitors. The jury leaned in. The press sat frozen. Vanessa's voice had been loud once. Now it echoed like evidence. Then came the part I dreaded. Testifying. Cassie had warned me I didn't have to say much. The paper trail, the recordings, the timeline, all airtight. But I wanted to speak. Needed to. When they called my name, I stood slowly, heart pounding in my ears. I walked to the witness stand, swore the oath, and met the eyes of the jury. I'm not here for revenge, I began. I'm here because my father trusted me to protect what he built. I told them about the roses, about the envelope buried beneath the white petals, about how Vanessa showed up wearing $800 shoes and a smile like she'd already won. I told them about the fear I felt when I read the line in her file, "Remove Clara permanently." But mostly I talked about Dad. What he left behind wasn't just money, I said. It was a home, a legacy, a belief that honesty still matters. Vanessa's attorney objected once, twice, tried to rattle me, but it didn't work. Because for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't shaken. I wasn't afraid. I was grounded. And I was done letting anyone rewrite the truth. When I stepped down, the defense tried to spin. She was hurt, the attorney said. She acted irrationally. She didn't plan fraud, she planned a future. The so-called evidence was collected by a dying man who was at best paranoid. But then Theo was called to the stand. He laid it all out. The bribe, the check, the recordings, the paper trail leading back months before Dad's diagnosis. And finally, the journal, the one Vanessa thought she'd destroyed. It wasn't just ambition, Theo said clearly. It was manipulation. Repeated, patterned, dangerous. The final nail came in the form of an FBI agent who testified that Vanessa's real name, Jennifer Aniston, according to a false identity ring, was linked to similar cases in 2 other states. Elder fraud, financial coercion, sealed settlements. Now she'd finally been caught red-handed. Closing arguments ended before lunch. The jury didn't take long. We were called back less than 4 hours later. I clutched the edge of the prosecution table, trying not to hold my breath. The foreman stood. On the charges of financial fraud, identity misrepresentation, and attempted coercion of a legal will. We find the defendant guilty on all counts. Vanessa didn't cry. She didn't flinch. But her face fell flat. The mask cracked. The judge ordered her remanded without bail. A separate hearing for sentencing would follow, but she wouldn't walk free again. Not this time. Not ever. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted questions. One of them managed to ask Ms. Whitmore, "Do you feel vindicated?" Cassie stepped in front of me. "My client isn't here to gloat," she said. "She's here to rebuild. What was taken wasn't just money, it was trust. And now it's time for healing." We made our way through the crowd and into the car quiet for the first few minutes. Then Theo exhaled. "She's done. It's over." Cassie glanced back from the front seat. "Almost. Sentencing is next." But this was the win. I leaned my head against the window, watching the world blur by. Dad would have called it a clean game. He didn't believe in loud revenge. He believed in patience, in strategy, in letting the truth speak louder than any punchline. Later that night, I walked back through the house. Every room felt different, calmer, lighter. In the study, I sat in Dad's chair and opened the journal he left me. Most of the pages were business notes, ledger entries, quiet strategy. But tucked in the back was a page I hadn't seen before. Handwritten, dated a few days before he passed. To Clara. "If you ever wonder why I trusted you, it's because you never wanted anything from me. You just wanted peace. The world rewards people who take shortcuts, who cheat. But real builders, they take their time. And they leave something behind that lasts. This house is yours. But more than that, this fight is yours. You won it, with grace, with clarity, and with your mother's fire. I'll see you in the garden. Dad." I closed the journal, tears sliding down my cheeks quietly. Not from grief anymore, from pride. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. I didn't go for revenge. I didn't dress up for court or prepare a victim statement. I showed up in a soft blue blouse, hair tied back, hands steady. Not to watch Vanessa fall, but to watch justice finish what my father started. The judge sentenced her to 38 years without parole. The maximum under federal fraud charges, with additional time for identity theft and conspiracy. Liam took a deal. 17 years with eligibility after 12 for full cooperation. They both left the courtroom in shackles. No cameras, no press this time. Just silence. The kind that settles once the storm passes. We went home quietly. No champagne, no victory lap. Just the 3 of us, me, Theo, and Cassie, back in Dad's house, sitting around the kitchen table like we used to after family dinners. Theo broke the silence first. "It's weird. I thought I'd feel more something." "Relief," Cassie said. "It's always quieter than you think." "I don't know if I'm relieved," I said softly. "More like finally unburdened." Theo looked at me. What now? It was the question that had hovered around us for weeks. Now that justice was served, what came next? 3 days later, I stood in front of the greenhouse. Not the one in the backyard, the new one. The lot Dad had bought in secret. The one I used to walk past every day on my way to the shop, never knowing it was already mine. We'd spent the last few weeks cleaning it out, sweeping broken glass, tearing out rotted wood, redoing the wiring. Cassie had connected me with a local architect. Theo showed up daily with coffee and fresh ideas, surprising everyone, including himself, with how much he loved getting his hands dirty. "I never realized how satisfying demolition could be," he joked one afternoon covered in dust and wood chips. "We were turning something broken into something alive." Again, opening day of Jeremy Gardens came on the first Sunday of spring. The sign out front was simple: white wood, green lettering, my father's initials in the corner. Jeremy Gardens, a place to bloom again. The front space had been turned into a greenhouse shop. Potted herbs, wildflowers, and succulents lined the shelves. The back was open for events, memorials, baby showers, even small weddings. A pergola stood in the corner, draped in vines, right where Dad's favorite bench used to sit. The grand opening wasn't grand at all. Just friends, local business owners, some of Dad's former employees, a few neighbors. Theo's old college roommate brought his 2 kids who ran laps around the flower beds. It was small, but it was perfect. That afternoon, after the last guest left, I stepped behind the counter and unlocked a drawer. Inside was Dad's letter, the one from the greenhouse. I kept it there, right under the register, next to a picture of him with his hands in the dirt. "Now it's your turn to build. I believe in you." Every time I read it, it hits differently. Not just because it was his blessing, but because it became a promise I made to myself. Cassie came by just before closing, holding a clipboard and grinning like she was about to deliver good news. "I have a surprise," she said. "Is it the grant?" She nodded. "Approved. You've got funding to expand into the next lot if you want it." I laughed. "I barely have time to water the herbs in this one." Cassie gave me a look. "You'll figure it out. You always do." Then she paused. "By the way, the district attorney's office called. The other 2 families, the ones Vanessa scammed before, they're reopening the cases. Your dad's journal might help them recover losses. One of them sent a letter. They want to thank you." I blinked. "Thank me." "They said your case gave them the courage to speak up again." I stood there holding that thought. How something as small as a buried envelope had grown into something that gave strangers strength. That evening, Theo and I sat on the garden bench behind the shop, watching the sun fall behind the trees. "You think Dad would have liked it?" he asked, nodding toward the pergola. I smiled. He would have pretended to critique the layout, but yeah, he'd love it. "I still can't believe she almost erased all of this," he said. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I watched the wind brush against the leaves. "She didn't win," I said finally. "And that's what matters." Theo glanced down. "I'm sorry again, Clara. For not seeing it sooner. For doubting you." I reached for his hand. "You helped fix it. That's what counts now." We sat in silence for a while, not because we didn't have more to say, but because sometimes healing doesn't need noise. Just space. And time. Later that night, I closed up the shop alone. I turned off the lights, checked the door, and walked through the greenhouse one last time. The smell of damp earth and lavender still clung to the walls. I knelt by the potting bench where Dad used to show me how to separate roots without damaging them. He once said something I never understood back then. Some things don't grow until they're replanted. Now I knew exactly what he meant. Because that was me. Uprooted, shaken, or imshikin, nearly destroyed. And yet here I was, blooming again. Outside, the stars were starting to appear. I locked the door behind me and looked out across the dark lot where wildflowers were starting to push through the soil. Theo's voice echoed from the front gate. "You ready to head out?" I turned and nodded. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go home." I used to think justice looked like fireworks. Courtroom takedowns, public disgrace. But now I know better. Justice is a slow bloom. It's quiet, patient, relentless. It grows in silence. And when it finally arrives, it's unstoppable. Dad didn't leave me a fortune. He left me something better. The space to grow, and the roots to hold strong when everything else tried to break. This isn't the end of the story. It's just the start of a garden. Story 2. Emily Hartwell watched the city slowly turn to its fall hues from the windows of a high-rise in Boston. She sighed contentedly as she stood at the window of her roomy office. The CEO herself had expressed her admiration for the significant project her team had been working on, which had finally begun. "Emily, you've done a fantastic job. Next year, I'll put your name on the list for a promotion." As a core manager at Nova Technologies, Emily's ability and devotion were praised by CEO Ann Taylor. After 10 years of hard work, Emily felt that her efforts were finally paying off. She had a steady salary and was seen as successful by her colleagues. Recalling the Thanksgiving holiday that would start tomorrow, she said, "Thank you." Her yearly visit to her family's house was about to begin. She phoned her mother and went back to her workstation to check her last few emails. "I'm going out shortly, Mom. This year, I'll be bringing my own cranberry sauce." Through the receiver came Martha's kind voice. "Oh, Emily, you have the finest cranberry sauce. Be careful when driving. Your arrival is anticipated by Jessica and the kids." Emily grinned. Since her father John had died unexpectedly 3 years ago from a heart attack, family ties appeared to have become even more solid, and her mother's voice had a reassuring tone. Emily left the workplace and went to her apartment to pack her bags and the prepared cranberry sauce into the car. Without traffic, the travel from Boston to her family's suburban Newton home took roughly 40 minutes. Emily thought about what had happened since she graduated from college while she listened to the radio in the vehicle. She had always provided for her family's needs, including paying for her mother's colon cancer treatment, her father's burial, her sister Jessica's college tuition, the down payment on the house, and Jessica's wedding. That's more than $800,000. For most people, that would have been a significant sum, but Emily thought it had been a selfless gesture. As she stopped in front of the family house, she told herself that it was for the family, of course. When the door opened, Jessica and Martha hurried out, grinning. "We've been waiting, Emily." Martha gave her daughter a firm embrace. The three of them hugged at the door as big sister Jessica joined in. "Mom, I'm very glad to see you, Jessie." Sincerely, Emily thought. She walked into the living room to see the big TV her mother had been dreaming about, along with brand new leather couches. Emily had given them to her mother as a birthday gift last month. "Mom, that looks beautiful." Emily grinned. With tears in her eyes, Martha answered, "Thank you very much. I'm not sure what would have happened to us if it weren't for you." Jessica escorted her sister to the kitchen by taking her arm. "Having you is such a blessing, sis. Mike's career has stabilized and we were able to begin the children's education insurance." Emily grinned as she watched Jessica's kids, 3-year-old Noah and 5-year-old Emma, play in the living room corner. They rushed over to Emily as soon as they realized they weren't. "Are you present, Emma?" "It's not courteous," Jessica reprimanded. "It's all right," Emily chuckled. "I do, of course. But that's for the surprise tomorrow." Emily played with the kids and then went to the kitchen to help make the turkey stuffing for supper. Martha gave her daughter's face a gentle pat. "I take it you've lost weight. You're exerting too much effort. Give yourself a bit more thought." "I'm all right, Mom. My work is rewarding and I adore it," Emily replied. "No boyfriend yet?" her mom inquired. Emily gave a headshake. "Right now, I'm concentrating on my career." Furthermore, she paused her speech. In actuality, she had little time or money to devote to romantic relationships because she was spending most of it on her family. "Don't worry about us too much." Martha looked concerned as she grasped her daughter's hand. "I also want you to be happy." "I'm glad, Mom," Emily smiled in response. "I'm happy when my family is well and healthy." Mike, Jessica's husband, and Emily had a heated discussion about his business over dinner. Mike was employed at a nearby construction business, but his pay was erratic due to changes in the economy. Nevertheless, he thanked Emily for things. "The children's future would have been unknown without you. Many thanks. That's the purpose of family," Emily said with a smile as she held up her wine glass. Emily used her smartphone to check her savings account balance later that evening while she was alone herself in the guest room. She had no regrets, even though she was aware that it was far less than the typical savings for her age group. She recalled what her father had said as she gazed out the window at the starry sky. "Emily family is everything. Keep it in mind." "Dad, I understand." Emily spoke to the stars in a whisper. "This family will be all right as long as I'm here." For the first time in a long time, she would spend time with her family tonight. Snow had started to fall outside the window as Emily woke up. There was something hallowed about the first snowfall on Thanksgiving morning in the peaceful Boston suburbs. She went downstairs to put on her bathrobe after getting out of bed. Aromas and sounds of cooking were already permeating the air. Martha was in the kitchen getting the turkey ready. Emily's mother turned, looking a little anxious as Emily walked in. "Greetings, ma'am. Do you need assistance?" "Oh, Emily, you're awake." After cleaning her hands, Martha started to pour coffee. "Actually, I wanted to discuss something with you." Emily was momentarily tight from experience at the tone of her voice. "There's something to discuss regarding her mother, usually referred to money problems." She took the coffee cup and sat at the counter. "Mom, what is it?" Taking a deep breath, Martha gave her daughter a stern look. "Ruth, it's about the house." Emily sighed to herself. "The roof. What took place the hurricane last month wrecked it. After inspecting it, a contractor concluded that a full repair was necessary." Martha seemed distressed. "It won't be fully covered by the insurance." "What will the price be?" Emily asked, trying to look composed. $70,000. Martha's voice grew quieter. "The insurance, however, will only cover $30,000. That's the remaining $40,000. She stopped talking. Emily heard the voice in her head once more. A new refrigerator cost $5,000 last month, $2,000 for yard upkeep the previous month. Even though the costs appeared to go on forever, her face didn't alter. "I get it. Next week I'll send the money." Martha's expression lightened. "Really? You really are a daughter of angels." She grasped Emily's two hands. "I'm not sure what I would do without you. That is the purpose of family." Emily interrupted her mother. "Grandpa's home has to be maintained. This house belonged to the Hartwell family, who had owned the mansion for 3 generations. Emily also had recollections of the ancient house her grandpa had constructed. She understood the logic, but in her heart, she was wondering why she was constantly required to pay. Gradually, Emily assisted in preparing the Thanksgiving feast in the morning, helping to make the green bean casserole, mashed potatoes, stuffing, and turkey. As she prepared these traditional delicacies, she shared lovely times with her family. She was attempting to work out her feelings even after pledging to cover the cost of the roof repair. "Do you have a moment, sis?" Jessica phoned Emily in the living room after lunch. Jessica pulled out a glossy brochure while the sisters were alone themselves. "Take a look at this." She handed the brochure to Emily with excitement. "What do you think?" "Isn't it lovely?" Emily took the brochure. It was a catalog for the latest model BMW X5. "It's a nice car," Emily said carefully. "Do you want to buy it?" "Yes." Jessica's eyes sparkled. "I need a safe car for the children. But Mike's salary makes it difficult, right?" Emily anticipated her sister's words. Tears welled up in Jessica's eyes. "Mike is trying his best, but the construction industry hasn't recovered yet." She took her sister's hand. "If I had about $45,000 with the trade-in value." For a moment, Emily felt an impulse to refuse. But seeing her sister's teary eyes and hearing her niece and nephew's laughter from the next room, she couldn't find the words to decline. "I'll pay it back in installments." Jessica quickly added a little each month. "All right," Emily answered quietly. "But this is the last time." "Of course." Jessica jumped with joy and hugged her sister tightly. "You're the best sister in the world." That evening, Emily was organizing her finances in her room. The laptop screen displayed records of her expenditures on her family over the past 5 years. While major medical expenses and funeral costs were unavoidable normal living costs, like roof repairs and car purchases, should have been covered by each family member's income. Especially in Jessica's case, her husband Mike's income was not particularly low, even considering the instability of the construction industry. An annual income of $60,000 was average for this area. So why were they always short of money? Emily looked at her social media. Jessica's posts showed photos of relaxing time at a spa last month, dinner dates with Mike at expensive restaurants, and pictures of her happily holding brand name bags. She said she'd pay back a little each month. Emily remembered past promises, college tuition, wedding expenses. None had ever been repaid. "I'm overthinking," she told herself. "That's what family is for. We help each other." However, her colleague Rebecca's words came to mind. Emily, you're too nice. Being family doesn't mean you should be exploited. At dinner time, Emily sat down with her usual smile. The family conversation was pleasant and warm. Martha showed off her new jewelry, and Jessica talked about events at the children's school. Emily, thanks to you, we are truly blessed. Martha raised her wine glass. Having a daughter like you makes me the happiest mother in the world. We can live because of Emily? Jessica joined in. I can't imagine what life would be without you, sis. Listening to the words of gratitude from her family, Emily felt conflicted. Being thanked turned her doubts into guilt. Am I a terrible person for doubting my family? That night alone, Emily checked her savings balance and was shocked. Her savings at age 35 were far below the average for her age group. Her 401k for retirement had only minimal contributions. At this rate, I'll have to work forever, she muttered, calculating her future outside the window. Snow continued to fall silently. Emily lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Is my life only for my family? The question arose in her heart. Supporting blood family is natural. She tried to tell herself, but a sense of discomfort grew stronger in her heart. Her life had always been family first. Her own desires were postponed. She had no room to deepen romantic relationships, and she constantly saved money while her colleagues enjoyed vacations. All of it was to support her family. Is this love, or... Emily swallowed her words. To call it exploitation was too harsh. A doubt. On the eve of Thanksgiving. Emily fell asleep, battling complex emotions. The next morning, Emily was awake from early morning. Outside the window, snow had accumulated, and the fresh morning light illuminated the snow surface. She lay in bed organizing the day's schedule. In her mind, put the turkey in at noon, prepare the side dishes. She recalled the cooking plan she had made with her mother last night. Emily looked at the clock. 7:30 a.m. Originally, she had a brunch appointment with her colleague Diane. Since Diane also had no family, they had a tradition of meeting just for Thanksgiving morning. However, because Martha had said it would help if you could come around noon tomorrow. Since we have a lot of cooking, Emily had canceled her brunch with Diane. After showering, Emily checked her mobile phone. There was a message from Diane. It's unfortunate, but it can't be helped. Let's definitely meet next year. Happy Thanksgiving. Emily smiled and replied, then looked out the window. The snow had stopped and the sun was showing its face. She suddenly had an idea. If I help with the cooking preparations, Mom might be happy. She decided to change her plans and head to the family home early. She thought about contacting Martha but decided to make it a surprise and refrained from calling. At 9:15 a.m., Emily parked in front of the family home. Although she arrived an hour earlier than planned, the kitchen should already be bustling. She took an apron and her special dessert wine from the trunk and walked quietly toward the house. She paused for a moment at the entrance. The old house, covered in snow, stood peacefully in the morning light. Memories of childhood flooded her mind. Fishing with her father, cooking with her mother, playing with her sister. All precious memories. Emily quietly opened the door with her key. The hallway was quiet and warm air enveloped her. Voices and aromas drifted from the kitchen. She was about to say good morning as she proceeded down the hallway, but stopped when she heard her mother and sister's conversation. That won't do, Jessica Martha's voice said. You need to think more carefully. I know, Mom. Jessica's voice contained laughter. But Emily will take care of it somehow, like always. Emily stopped. The two were talking about her standing at the corner of the hallway. She listened to the conversation. I wonder how much we can get out of Emily, Jessica said. I got the new car, but next I'm thinking of asking for a kitchen renovation. It's unnatural to ask for so much in succession, Martha replied. Wait a bit. Emily is generous, but she's not stupid. Emily's heart began to race. This conversation didn't sound like a joke she had against the wall and continued listening. How should I bring it up? Jessica's voice continued. Maybe we need a safe kitchen for the children. Or a mic. Salary just isn't enough. Her mother's laughter followed. She's weak to the word of family. If you say for the family, she'll give anything. Emily's hands began to tremble. She gripped the dessert wine bottle tightly and held her breath. Actually, Mike already got promoted. Jessica's voice grew quieter. His annual salary is now $85,000. But don't tell Emily. Smart girl. Martha's voice held pride. We deserve a little luxury since Emily is so generous with her money. We might as well take advantage of it. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. Was this a bad dream? She leaned against the wall as if sleepwalking. Mom, I'm thinking. Jessica's voice was heard again. She still doesn't realize she's our breadwinner. That's right, Martha added with a laugh. Even though she bought the house and the car, she still thinks she's being helpful. Emily almost let out a small sound but desperately suppressed it. Her hands were shaking and she felt her knees weakening. We were really lucky, Martha's voice continued. Who would have thought she'd become so successful? Thanks to her, we can live comfortably. Yes, Jessica agreed. Imagine getting $40,000 when there's no need for roof repairs. The roof, Emily gasped. Had the roof repair she promised to pay for yesterday been a lie. With that $40,000, we can realize our Bahamas trip, Martha said. Just tell Emily it's for a roof repairs and she'll be fine. She never comes to check. Jessica said she always sends the money just as we say in Emily's mind. The world began to spin. I had all her love and trust been built on deception. The trembling in her hands spread throughout her body and she pressed her back against the wall. How much have we squeezed out of her so far? Jessica asked. At least $1 million? I would think, Martha answered. Half of her salary is ours. The laughter of the two echoed in the kitchen. Emily felt a pain as if her heart was shattering into pieces. But don't you sometimes feel guilty? Jessica's voice contained a hint of hesitation. What are you saying? Martha's voice turned cold. She's a daughter of the Hartwell family. Supporting family is only natural. Besides, she gladly gives money. Just say for the family, and she'll give it any time. True, Jessica immediately agreed. Thanks to Emily, we can live such a wonderful life. Emily quietly backed away. Her heart had turned as cold as ice with trembling hands. She placed the dessert wine bottle on the hallway table and reached for the doorknob. Tears streamed down her cheeks in the brightness outside. Emily squinted for a moment. She walked to her car, opened the door, and collapsed into the seat. Then, without starting the engine, she just pressed her head against the steering wheel. 10 years. It was all a lie, she whispered. Memories from childhood flowed like a revolving lantern. Her father's death, her mother's illness, her sister's college. Was it all planned? She took a deep breath, trying to organize her scattered thoughts. Stay calm, stay calm. She took out her smartphone and sent a short message to Martha. Something urgent came up and I won't be able to come today. I'm sorry. After pressing the send button, she put her phone on silent mode. Emily started the engine and began to move the car slowly. She looked at the family home in the rearview mirror. The house that had been a symbol of love and trust now looked like a monument to deception. I won't be deceived again, she resolved as she drove. Anger and sadness intertwined in Emily's heart. However, there was also a strange sense of liberation. All the years of doubt and discomfort had now found their answer. What should I do? Back at her apartment, Emily first called her lawyer. James Morrison was an old friend of her father and had handled the family's legal matters for many years. James, I need to consult with you urgently. Her voice trembled but was filled with determination. Of course. Emily, what happened? It's about family. She took a deep breath. I need to act immediately to protect my assets. After hanging up, Emily opened her laptop and began to check all transaction records from the past 10 years. Bank statements, house deeds, car loans, everything needed to be thoroughly investigated. It's over, she firmed her resolve. I'm no longer the family bank. Outside the window. Snow began to fall again. Emily stared at her reflection in the window. There were no tears in her eyes, replaced by a cold light of determination. The morning after Thanksgiving, Martha stood by the window gazing at the snow-covered garden. Emily's sudden cancellation yesterday had been unexpected, but she didn't seem overly concerned. "She'll call soon anyway," she told Jessica. "She always prioritizes us." Jessica was sitting on the sofa looking at something on her new tablet. "Yes, but it was a bit strange. She hasn't replied to this morning's text either." "You're worrying too much." Martha shrugged. "Emily is busy." Besides, Martha's words were interrupted by the sudden ringing of the doorbell. The clock showed 10 a.m. Who could that be? Martha tilted her head. "Emily, but she has a key." Jessica shrugged and Martha headed for the door. When she opened the front door, 3 men in black suits were standing there. One was in his mid-40s with a strict expression, another in his 30s holding a document case, and the third was somewhat older with a quiet impression. "Are you Mrs. Martha Hartwell?" the central man asked. "Yes, I am." Martha began to feel anxious. "And you are—" The man offered his business card. "James Morrison, representative attorney of Hartwell Law Firm." He pointed to the man next to him. "This is David Clark, representative of First Bank," and introduced the third person, "and Robert Taylor, representative of Premium Auto Finance." Martha accepted the business card in confusion. "What brings you here?" "We are here on behalf of Miss Emily Hartwell," Morrison answered calmly. "May we come in to talk?" Martha silently invited them in. Jessica stood up from the sofa and stood next to her mother with a tense expression. "What happened? Did something happen to Emily?" Jessica asked anxiously. "Miss Emily is fine," Morrison answered. "Today we have brought some legal documents." He opened his briefcase and took out a stack of papers. "These are legal documents regarding the return of property." "Return of property," Martha said with a confused expression. "What does that mean?" Mr. Clark stepped forward. "To put it simply, the mortgage on this house has actually been paid in full by Miss Emily Hartwell, and we will be changing the name on the deed." What the blood drained from Martha's face. Mr. Taylor continued. "Similarly, the loan for Jessica Williams' car, the BMW X5, is in Miss Emily's name." Jessica collapsed into a chair. "This must be some mistake." "It is not a mistake," Morrison said calmly. "Emily initiated all legal procedures yesterday. Here is a detailed record of all amounts she has given to you." The document he spread out clearly recorded all payment histories for the past 10 years. The mortgage, Martha's medical expenses, Jessica's college tuition, vehicle purchase costs, and the latest transfer labeled roof repair. All were recorded with dates and amounts. But Martha was at a loss for words. Emily loves family. For us. Financial exploitation can be a criminal offense even among family members, Mrs. Hartwell Morrison said firmly. Miss Emily has generously chosen not to press criminal charges, but she will proceed with civil recovery. Jessica looked up. Tears were floating in her eyes. Why this? You probably know why. Morrison answered coldly, according to what I heard from Emily. Yesterday's conversation was decisive. Martha and Jessica looked at each other and they realized the terrible truth. Emily had come earlier than scheduled and had heard their conversation. This is just a misunderstanding, Martha said weakly. Whatever the details. Legal proceedings have already begun. Mr. Clark said he pointed to the documents from today. The deed to this house reverts to Miss Emily Hartwell. Please vacate within 30 days. 30 days, Martha cried. But this is my house. No, it isn't, Morrison said calmly. On paper, it belongs to Miss Emily. She paid the mortgage and she has borne the maintenance costs. Mr. Taylor added the same applies to the car. We will come to collect it tomorrow. Where are we supposed to go? Jessica said, crying. That is not our concern, Morrison answered matter-of-factly. Miss Emily advises you to look for housing that matches your actual income. Income? Martha was confused. Yes, with Michael Williams' annual income of $85,000 plus your pension. A decent life should be possible. Morrison said calmly, although a trip to the Bahamas might be difficult. Jessica's face turned pale. Even Mike's promotion had been discovered. "Let me see," Emily Martha said desperately. "If we talk, she'll understand." "Miss Emily does not wish for direct contact for the time being," Morrison said firmly. "All communication should go through me." The three men calmly spread out the remaining documents: eviction notice, car, recovery authorization, bank account change forms, all with Emily's signature. "Please sign these documents." Morrison offered a pen Martha and Jessica as if in a nightmare. Sign the documents with trembling hands. The situation they had once manipulated had completely reversed. "That completes it." Morrison returned the documents to his briefcase. "We will contact you later regarding the details of the eviction. If you have any questions, please contact my office." After the three men left, Martha and Jessica sat stunned in the living room outside the window. Snow had begun to fall again. "How did it come to this?" Martha said in a trembling voice. Jessica didn't answer. Her phone rang. It was from Mike. "What's wrong?" She answered the phone. Mike's confused voice could be heard from the other end. "I got a call from the bank at the office. They say the car loan is in default." "What's happening?" Jessica hung up. She finally understood. Years of exploitation had come to an end. Now they would have to live within their own incomes. "Emily will still give us money, won't she?" she weakly asked her mother. "After all, we're family." Martha was staring out the window. "It's over." "Jessica," her voice was hollow. "What we did was unforgivable." A year later, from the window of a high-rise apartment in Boston, a beautiful evening view of the city spread out. Emily stood by the window, gazing at the autumn leaves in a distant park. Her life had changed dramatically since that Thanksgiving day. The spacious living room of the luxury apartment was furnished with pieces she had chosen for herself. No longer needing to save for others, she felt the joy of living for herself for the first time. Cheerful voices could be heard from the kitchen. Her colleague and close friend Sarah was preparing Thanksgiving dinner. "Emily, can I open the wine?" Sarah called out. "Of course." Emily smiled and headed for the kitchen. "The cranberry sauce is already done." Having Sarah and Dan's family over for dinner was a new tradition for this year's Thanksgiving. Sarah had been a colleague at the company, but as Emily overcame her difficult period, she had become a true friend. Sarah's husband, Dan, and their two children had also welcomed Emily as part of their family. Over the past year, there had been numerous contacts from Martha and Jessica. Letters of apology, offers of reconciliation, and sometimes angry messages. Emily had processed most of them through her lawyer, avoiding direct contact. Occasionally, she felt loneliness deep in her heart, but she understood that it was a sensation coming from years of habit, not genuine loss. Her mother and sister had been forced to rebuild their lives afterward. Martha had moved to a small apartment and begun a frugal life for the first time. Jessica's relationship with her husband had deteriorated, eventually leading to divorce. With two children, she was now working multiple part-time jobs. Emily sometimes thought about her niece and nephew. They were innocent. She had anonymously established an educational trust fund to secure their college funds. That was the only way she could be involved. The intercom rang. Sarah's family had arrived. "May we come in, Sarah's husband?" Dan's cheerful voice echoed in the apartment. The children, Ellie and Jake, also rushed in energetically, and Emily. Ellie hugged her this term and represented a relationship bound by genuine affection without blood ties. At dinner, while carving the turkey, Sarah said, "This is a special Thanksgiving." "In what way?" Emily asked. "Because you've become part of our family." Sarah smiled. "You've taught us that blood ties aren't necessary for a true family." Dan also raised his glass with Emily joining us. "Our Thanksgiving has become more special." Emily was too moved to speak. Tears welled up in her eyes. "You are my true family. True family isn't about blood ties, but heart connections." Emily finally managed to say, with the sky changing from evening to night in the background. Laughter and conversation resonated in the warm apartment. Emily was experiencing a truly happy Thanksgiving for the first time. Her new chapter in life was filled with true freedom from false bonds and connections with people she could genuinely trust. The first snow of the season began to fall outside the window, holding her wine glass. Emily was confident she had no regrets about her choices. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns and can be painful, but she knew that new paths open up beyond that pain. "Happy Thanksgiving," Sarah whispered to her. "Thank you," Emily replied with a heartfelt smile. "This is the first Thanksgiving where I've known true gratitude."